Contrast paint can be used to make your miniatures look fantastic in a variety of different ways. We can use the paint straight from the pot to base coat, shade and highlight our miniatures at the same time, or we can thin them down and apply them as shades to achieve some really cool effects. Some of the paints are quite translucent, while others are much more pigmented. This makes them fantastic paints and a great addition to any painter's toolkit. When we're using contrast paint, it's best to use an undercoat that works really well with these paints. We'd recommend Grey Sear, Wraithbone or White Scar. It's up to you which one you choose. They'll all make your contrast look slightly different. For example, if you use Wraithbone as your undercoat, your paint will have a warmer tone. However, if you used White Scar, the final result will be colder and brighter. And Grey Sear is a really good middle ground. So the first way what we'll show you is by taking contrast paint straight from the pot. We'll be starting out with an undercoat of Wraithbone in order to achieve a slightly warmer effect. And we're going to be painting this entire Plague Bearer using Plague Bearer flesh. Give the paint a really good shake to make sure it's properly mixed. And then, using a medium shade brush, we dip straight into the pot and load up our brush. We're using a larger brush here as this helps to avoid brush strokes. We just need to add some paint to the palette to control how much is on our brush, as we don't want to overload it. Contrast paints are quite runny and they can quickly run out of control on a miniature. When you're using contrast, it's also important to make sure that there's no excess water in the bristles of your brush. This could dilute the paint and make it too watery, which would result in it not settling correctly on our miniatures. Now, the key with contrast paint is to apply it heavily and neatly. While the paint is wet, we can move it around, and this is how we get the best results. Work in small sections on your model. This will avoid any marks on the flat surfaces as the paint starts to dry. We want to work as quickly as possible, making sure to get into all those tricky to reach areas. While the paint is still wet, we need to pay attention to any pooling. If it looks like the paint is pooling too much anywhere, we need to clean off our brush and use that to soak up the excess. If we do leave it to pool too much in those recesses, we won't quite get the finish that we're looking for. And once that's dry, we can see how the contrast paint has base coated, shaded and highlighted our miniature all in one. Now we can also use contrast over larger and flatter surfaces. This will look a bit different to a model painted in base, layer and shade paints, but it will still look awesome, and using contrast can really speed up the painting process. This allows us to get great looking miniatures on the gaming table in no time at all. For this example, we've got a Space Marine Terminator undercoated in White Scar, and this time we'll be using Imperial Fist contrast paint. We apply the paint in just the same way, remembering to apply it heavily and neatly while making sure to control that excess pooling. Again, we work in small sections as this makes sure we get that consistent finish on all of the surfaces. Once you've applied the paint to one section, go back and control the pooling while it's still wet before you move on to the next area. Try to section off your miniature where there are natural lines or divisions between sections. This again helps to prevent an inconsistent finish. Now you can see that applying contrast paint in this way means that it pulls away from the edges and creates a highlight. This also adds depth to all those recesses. Before you know it, you'll have some awesome looking Terminator armor. And now you've seen how we can apply contrast paint to those larger and flatter surfaces, you can go away and apply this to loads of different miniatures, making them look awesome on the gaming table in no time at all. So, as we mentioned before, contrast is super versatile. We've painted in the silver details on our Namati Thrall here using Iron Hand steel, and we'll be using Frost Heart over these areas. By thinning the paint down with contrast medium, we can use it as more of a shade. This tints the flat surfaces and adds depth to the recesses at the same time. So we're going to start off by adding 2 parts contrast medium to our palette. Then clean off your brush and dry it off, then we'll add 1 part Frost Heart and mix all of that together. When we mix this together, we see that the paint flows better and it's more translucent, so that when we apply this to the silver, we get this really cool blue effect over the metal. And there we have it. Now you know all about contrast paint and how to use it to make your miniatures look awesome. These paints are such a versatile part of the Citadel colour paint range, and we hope you have fun experimenting with them. If you'd like more help with your Warhammer painting journey, check out our other Painting Essentials videos. These are packed full of tips that will really help you along. And with that, we hope you've enjoyed the video and we'll see you next time. Bye!